For thousands of miles, the Pacific's waves crash on sandy shores. On a sunny spring morning, tucked behind a jetty and lagoon, you can hear a constant buzz that's making quite a buzz across the Southwest. This is the Carlsbad desalination plant. It takes ocean water and makes drinking water, and it's the largest one in the Western Hemisphere. Fox 10 Phoenix took a tour of the facility, learning how it's changed San Diego County. While Arizona faces a water shortfall, the plant creates a waterfall of water wave by wave. Poseidon, the company that runs the plant, says they can make 54 million gallons of drinking water every day. The plant consumes water that flows past the jetties, and then it arrives at this 72-inch pipe. Before they remove the salt, they clean it first through layers of filters.
Anthracite, sand, and gravel.
Michelle Peters says this first step is basically like a Brita filter, ocean-sized.
Simple technology, relatively speaking, but very effective.
After they remove the gunk, they split the water. Half goes to desalination. The other half waits. We'll get to that in a second. Arizona has had its eye on desalination after former Governor Doug Ducey touted its success in many desert climates. The Arizona Water Infrastructure Finance Authority has proposed a $5.5 billion plan to build a desalination plant like this in Rocky Point and pipe the water all the way to Phoenix. In waterfront San Diego, even with this massive plant, only 10% of the county's water is desalinated.
We can't just rely on one option. We need to have our other options in place.
And this option took day after day, sunrise to sunset, for nearly 2 decades before any drinking water was created, according to the County Water Authority.
The permitting and the regulatory requirements here took a long time to get through that process.
Jeremy Crutchfield said everyone was on board, though, the residents and the politicians.
It really is incredible that we have the largest supply of water in the world right in our back door. Being able to access that and turn it into drinking water for our residents and bring that resilience, that drought-proof water supply to our region has been a very important part of our water diversification strategy here in San Diego.
In the sea of pipes and tubes, dials and knobs, the water headed for desal comes here. The reverse osmosis process pressurizes the water at 1,000 psi. It's forced through a tightly wound polymer layer with microscopic holes. At the end of the process, you have this.
Yeah, I mean, it tastes normal. It tastes like normal water.
Clean drinking water. Just like from your tap in Phoenix.
A little bit of magic.
But that magic might be hard to recreate.
In Arizona, you might see this endless supply of salt water on the horizon and think our problems are solved. But finding a way to get this water to your faucet couldn't be more complicated.
Whether a plant is built in San Diego or in Rocky Point, as was proposed by Arizona water officials, it would take years of negotiations and planning, and then hundreds of miles of pipeline would have to be laid. The cost would be high. Plus, Mexican officials would need to be on board, and so far they haven't been.
Is it realistic to think of this plant, a similar one like this in California, having a pipeline to Phoenix?
Having a pipeline that's not in to inland, hundreds of miles is not an easy task by any means. But in terms of evaluating potential options, it has to be on the table in terms of looking at new water supply sources. Again, what that feasibility is for it, it'll require a lot of folks at the table, negotiations, to figure out what the right answer is.
There are plenty of concerns besides the sheer cost of turning waves into faucet water.
If the question is, how do we sustain Arizona's current water use? Desalination absolutely cannot do that.
Natalie Cook is a native Arizonan, now an environmental researcher at Syracuse University and currently living in the Middle East. There, a huge portion of drinking water is thanks to desalination. She studies how they do it out there, and she says it all comes down to power.
They're able to do this because they have free, basically, right? Because they're all government controlled, government owned facilities, free energy and cheap to do that. The United States doesn't have access to that.
Remember how half of the water the Carlsbad plant takes in was set aside? Well, it's because of power. Poseidon says they take that remaining brine from the desalinated water that's still extremely pressurized, and they force it into the unpressurized stored salt water. That pressure transfer creates 46% of the power for the plant. Even at that, it still requires massive energy. Natalie isn't convinced it's sustainable on a larger scale.
If you desalinate enough seawater, if you do enough, you build enough technology, sure, you can engineer water solutions to lots of things, but that doesn't mean that Arizona and the state and the country even has the resources to build these crazy water infrastructures that would keep Arizona going at the rate that it is.
Do you think Arizona could have some percentage of desal water?
There's always a way. Engineers can do a lot of things. So yeah, I think it's something that could be evaluated for inland areas.
They all agree desal isn't the only answer, even in oceanfront San Diego. But many water officials in the Southwest continue to look at following San Diego's sandy footsteps.
The San Diego story can really help others who are going through a water supply challenge. You know, really for us, it was all tools in the toolbox. It wasn't just a silver bullet.
Steve Nielsen, Fox 10 News.